Jeremiah was a man acquainted with grief in his long life. Some have even given him the moniker of the weeping prophet. God called him at a young age to be a prophet for his people who were selfish and stubborn. Throughout his time as a spokesperson for God and a moral compass for Judah, he endured an unbelievable amount of persecution at the hands of many of God's chosen people. Then, near the end of his life, he suffered through the siege of Jerusalem that he graphically describes in the book of Lamentations. Read through this book of poetry and you will find yourself in the most depressing and difficult time of Jeremiah's life. And yet in the middle of it all, in chapter 3 and verses 19 through 23, you will also find this gem. Remember my affliction and my wanderings, the wormwood and the gall. My soul continually remembers it and is bowed down within me. But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. As Jeremiah observes all of the terrible things going on around him and all of the grief hits him, he stops, prays to God, and asks God to remember everything he's going through. Jeremiah can't shake any of the difficult things he's enduring or all of the terrible things he is witnessing. They are all he can think about. While Jeremiah's circumstances were undoubtedly extreme, maybe you have felt similarly through some of the challenges you've faced. The question is, how did Jeremiah endure? He says, "This I call to mind, and therefore I have hope." Jeremiah had to remind himself that God's love is steadfast and unfailing, that the Lord's mercies never come to an end, but are actually new every morning. And instead of focusing on how horrible things are, and they were, he praises God for how faithful he is. Jeremiah never diminishes himself or what he's going through. Rather, he magnifies God by focusing on his love, mercy, and faithfulness. It's challenging to speak to the heart of true tragedy and grief without sounding superficial. But these verses aren't worth sharing because they offer some simple solution to the profound sadness we find in this life. No, they're worth sharing because pain and sorrow are real, running deep into our hearts. But Jeremiah's story is real too. He was able to find hope, even in the darkest times. So his story and this poetry stands as a reminder for you and for me when we're fighting through it too. Doesn't mean it's easy to find hope, but it reminds us that by God's grace, it's possible. Listen to some more of what Jeremiah wrote. Some of it is hard to hear, but it all comes from the heart of a person who found hope in God through the grief this life sometimes brings. Let these words echo in your head this week. "The Lord is my portion," says my soul. "Therefore I will hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for a man that he bear the yoke in his youth. Let him sit alone in silence when it is laid on him. Let him put his mouth in the dust. There may yet be hope. Let him give his cheek to the one who strikes, and let him be filled with insults. For the Lord will not cast off forever. But though he cause grief, he will have compassion according to the abundance of his steadfast love. For he does not afflict from his heart or grieve the children of men."